Welcome, New England and Bermuda members, some Kiwanis International staff, friends from other districts, and members of the Emily Saalfrank fan club. My name is Elise DeNorfia. I am the Leadership Development Coordinator and member of the Kiwanis Club of New England and Bermuda. It's great to see all of you here on Zoom, and welcome to those who are watching live on Facebook. This is our fifth virtual workshop session in our 2021-2022 virtual workshop series. This is a reminder to all of you in the New England and Bermuda district that all of our workshops have the potential to count as interclubs in your secretary reports. If your club has enough members attending this workshop, you get to report an interclub with each individual club in attendance. To help everyone determine the number of interclubs they can report, we ask all attendees to send a quick message in the chat with your name and the name of the club that you are a part of. If your club is eligible for an interclub, you can record it one of three ways. You could either write down the names of all the clubs in attendance. You can click the ... in the chat to save the chat so you can review the club names later. Or you can visit our Google Drive of resources for a list of clubs represented at each workshop compiled by our fantastic committee's interclub liaison, David Griffin. You can always find a link to that folder in the confirmation email, or it'll be in the Linktree email or the Linktree web address that I send out later in the chat once everybody's done introducing themselves. So before we start tonight's workshop, just a couple housekeeping items. We are going to keep everyone muted at the beginning to assure an uninterrupted presentation. You're welcome to keep your camera on. Emily would love to see your smiling faces, but that's not required. If you have questions for Emily, please post them in the chat. You can send them to everyone or you can send them directly to me. If you're watching on Facebook, you can comment on the live stream with any questions that you may have, and we will have some time for Q&A at the end. Tonight's presentation will be about 1 hour. You'll be able to find recordings from this workshop and all workshops earlier this year and in the 2021, 2022 Kiwanis year, 2020, 2021 Kiwanis year, the last two Kiwanis years, that's a lot of 20s, on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So they are all there. There's probably close to 40 workshops that you could view over the last year. So let's get started. Our speaker tonight is Emily Saalfrank, formerly Emily Sharp, some of you may know her as, but recently married, congratulations, who is an area director of Kiwanis International. She happens to be the area director of the New England district, which is why we have such a strong, close connection with her. And we appreciate that she's here tonight. And she is going to be speaking to us about creating positive leadership. Emily, take it away.
Hello, friends. Hello, and happy Wednesday. I am so glad that you are here. There are so many familiar faces on the screen, so I'm so excited to see so many of you. Like Elise mentioned, my name is Emily Saalfrank. I am an area director on staff, and what that means is that I get to work with 8 of our Kiwanis districts and support them in all things membership and education. So I'm so lucky to get to work with New England and Bermuda, and it's really just a joy to be here tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Let's see if I can do this. Elise, I'm looking to you to give me a nods up that you can see the right screen. Perfect. Okay. So friends, tonight, like Elise just mentioned, we're going to talk about leadership and specifically positive leadership and what that looks like. And I will go ahead and preface this. Many of y'all know I could get up here and I could talk all day long to anybody, and I could get to know the walls around me, their life story. But what I will say is that you will learn a lot more from each other than you ever will from me. So I'm really hoping that you will participate in the chat, and then towards the end of this session, I will ask that you unmute and feel free to share any thoughts or ask any questions that you have. And also, as I'm introducing myself, I have a new name, but I just want to give you a little context of who I am. I am a Southern gal from East Tennessee. I lived in Friendsville, Tennessee my whole life until I moved here, which is Indianapolis, Indiana. And I have lived here for about 8 years now. And again, you've heard me say this before. I'll say it again because I would not be doing my job if I didn't. I can assure you that y'all are the ones with the accent, and I most certainly do not. So thank you for bearing with me as we proceed tonight. So let's go ahead and jump in to talk all about leadership, and specifically positive leadership. So on the screen, you can see we have one of my favorite quotes. Only 3 things happen naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. And y'all, that is so true in many shapes and forms. So tonight, specifically, what we're going to talk about is types of leadership, what they all have in common, and then some helpful tips and tricks that I hope you can leave with tonight and bring back to your own lives and your own Kiwanis clubs that you work with each and every single day. So something else that I kind of wanted to throw out there, being positive in a negative situation is not naive. It's leadership. And oftentimes I think that that's what we have to focus on is really being that positive influence, because one of the questions I want to ask you is who is a leader? And I hate to tell you this, but every single person on this call is a leader tonight. You have it written across your forehead in case you didn't know. You are here tonight. You signed up, whether you volunteered or you were voluntold to be here. And that's because you're a leader in some way, shape, or form. And I'm glad. I know you have a choice of where to be tonight, and I'm glad you're hanging out with me for a little bit. So I want you to put on your thinking caps, and this is where I want you to start using the chat feature. Who are some famous leaders that come to mind? When I say leader, who comes to mind first off? But go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to ask Elise to read some of those to me. Okay, not everyone at once. I know I'm asking you to do a lot. I'm asking you to smile. I'm asking you to share some thoughts. Oh, Ed Gleaner, I know I can count on you, Ed. Thank you. Elise, do you want to share some answers?
Yeah, some of the answers that I see are President Obama, FDR, Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy. Oh, yep.
I love it.
Churchill, Michelle Obama.
Absolutely. Good. Well, our brainwaves are flowing, and some of us are thinking on the same wavelength. So some of the famous leaders that not only did I think of, but that come up when you first Google who are the most famous leaders in our world are Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, maybe George Washington, or maybe you were thinking, I'm surprised no one said this, my personal favorite, Dolly Parton, right? Like, love a good Dolly. She's my spirit animal, my favorite. So whenever we think about good leaders, these are some of the people that may come to mind. However, I want to do this workshop by sharing my favorite leader with you tonight. And my favorite leader happens to be Beckett Everest Cunningham. Beckett was born in 2017 on April 11th, the day after my birthday. And he is the son of my best friend of 32 years, Sarah. So Beckett is very special to me in my life. He has a little sister, Blakely. We go to the beach together every year. And my husband, my new husband, Zach, and I love to watch him play Wii ball. It is one of our favorite activities. And why am I telling you all this? And why am I showing you pictures of one of my favorite humans? Well, not only is Beckett hilarious, but he's just so smart and talented and brilliant. So I want to tell you a little story quickly about Beckett, who is almost 5 in April. So the other day I was talking to Sarah, and Beckett gets on the phone. He goes, Emmy, guess what? And I said, what, Beck? Like, what is it? And he said, I got to be the line leader at school today. And I was like, you did? That is awesome. What did you get to do? And he said, and he went on and on, because as children do, they give you all the details and they're so excited, right? So he went on and on to share, I was the line leader and I got to hold the stick. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what stick are you holding? And he said, well, the line leader gets to hold the stick so everyone knows who the line leader is and they get to lead us to all of our activities. And I was like, that's so cool, Beck. And he was so proud of it. But also he was like, Emmy, there was this girl who was not following the line leader. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, well, she just would not stay in line. And I had to go tell her, hey, you are not in line. And so he was just going on and on about this. And it got me thinking. I said, if this 4-year-old, almost 5-year-old, understands the concept of leadership, what does that mean? And how can that translate to us who are a little bit older than 4 or 5 years old? And we also have an understanding of leadership. So what does that mean? So I worked with his mom, Sarah, my best friend, to ask him some questions about leadership. And I want to share those with you today. And we're going to tie them into all about being a positive leader. So you are getting ready to see several different short clips of Beckett and some questions that I asked him. And I tried to put the questions at the top of the screen so you can also hear and see what Sarah said or what Beckett said to these questions. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one. Elise, I'm going to ask you to give me a head nod to make sure you can hear these. Okay, ready, go.
What is leadership?
A leader leads people around.
A leader, there you have it, folks. My job here is done. What does a leader do? A leader leads people around. It is as easy as that, right? If only. Our second question.
Who is a good leader?
Me,
And what makes you a good leader?
because I listen to people's ideas.
So Beckett, the question was, is who is a great leader? And did you hear? He said me. And he was so quick, he didn't even hesitate, right? And this was just an out of the blue question that I asked him. And he was so quick to say me. Like we need more people who are willing to say me, like I have good leadership qualities, right? When is the last time you said who's a leader and you said me? Right? Like that's the kind of attitudes we need to have as we are looking for more leaders every day, right? And the other thing I want us to think about is, although sometimes we know that people need to be told they have leadership skills, I think something comes from that confidence piece that we can all tend to work on. And the second thing he said was that a leader is a good leader because they listen to people, right? And I think that is 100% true, friends. Listening is something that we need to do more of. And there's that cheesy saying, right? We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen more than we talk, right? And I think that's so true. So as a leader, your first challenge of many tonight that you're going to be given is to listen more than you speak and to see what comes of that. And there are so many other good qualities of being a leader. So we're going to talk about those next.
Who is a good leader? What is leadership?
Okay, so you can see them up on the screen here, and I kind of want to talk about a few of those together. The first one is that leaders don't complain, right? They've, instead of focusing on the problems and complaining, they're truly focusing on the solutions, right? Also, instead of attacking people, friends, leaders attack problems. What if we had more leaders that instead of attacking people, attack problems? What would that look like? What would our clubs look like? What would our organizations look like? Also, leaders focus on where you're going rather than where you are. They have that bird's eye view of here's where we're going as an organization or as a meeting or as a group of people. And that's probably why they were chosen to be in that leadership position in the first place, right? That they're focused on where you're going. The next is lead with love. I think that's so important. And again, you're here tonight, which I'm so thankful because you care and leaders care. So they lead with love instead of fear. There are so many things in our life that might cause us fear, right? And instead of leading with fear, our leaders are most likely going to lead with love. They also provide that love and accountability. A good leader is not one that's like, oh, I love you, you're doing great. Oh, right? Because that's lies. Like, we know that that's not true. And if you as a leader are doing that, let's work on that a little bit. And instead of just loving on people, let's love them and hold them accountable for certain things, right? There are so many ways that we can do that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those. I personally tend to think that it starts with those conversations of like, hey, let's have some conversations that's going to hold us accountable. And leaders also simply pursue excellence. They believe in a brighter future, so they really are going to focus on taking the necessary actions to excel with all that they do and to create more of it. They're going to create more excellence. The next concept I want you to think about is leaders accomplish more. Now, what do I mean by that? Leaders accomplish more because they're having a more positive mood. They are focusing on that enhanced satisfaction. Leaders are focusing on greater engagement. And y'all, leaders are focusing on improved performance. That's that whole accomplishing more. That's what our leaders are doing. Leaders in general communicate. And this is, if you hear anything that I hear or that I say, hear this, friends. Typically, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? I'm going to say that again. People don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. So as a leader, again, everyone on this call tonight, are you showing that you care about people? That's how people are going to know that you are a good leader, is because you care about them. And how are you supposed to show that? Oftentimes, again, I go back to that communication piece. We've talked about so many things, but the reason why I think communication is so important is because it varies to different people, right? Like, I may know that Elise prefers text messaging, so I can text her at any time and she'll be like, text back. But then with Gayla or Governor-elect John that's on the phone, or my friend Brad Boyd, I know that I can call them at any time and they will always pick up the phone, and Gayla will be like, hey, Emily, how are you sparkling today? Which I love, right? And that's just something that I can always count on, and I'm going to communicate to them the way that they prefer to be communicated with. Because even though that makes my life more challenging, that is how they prefer communication and how I, as a leader, need to communicate with them, right? So again, communication is key and is something that everyone can focus on and work on. Easier said than done, though. So now we're going to talk about problems. So the question that I'm about to ask Beck is, what problems do leaders have to deal with?
What kind of problems do leaders have to deal with?
Leading people around and make sure they follow them.
And what kind of problem could there be?
Somebody's lost.
And then what would you do?
Go and find them.
The reason why I love this is because it's so simple, but it's so true, right? Like, what kind of problems do leaders have to deal with? With, again, keep in mind the context that Beckett has, mostly as a leader, is literally leading people around to area, right? But those people that are lost, or that conversation he was sharing with me about this little girl who was not following his line, right? At times, we as leaders have to go find those lost people. And I know, because I've been there, done that. Sometimes it could be like finding Waldo, right? Like, who remembers Where's Waldo, right? Like, that's something we probably all remember. And it's like, how am I supposed to find these people? And what am I supposed to do with that, right? So I think that it is one of those things that we need to do as leaders, because it's written in our job description, but also I think everybody tends to lead differently, right? And we're all going to go find those people differently, right? Well, so what I want to talk about next is what those leadership styles are, and give you a little context about each of them. So I do a lot of research all the time, and I'm one of those like curious learners. So I learn a lot by asking questions, and I talk to my colleagues about this a lot, and I find some interesting articles. And so when you simply Google in our Google machine, hey, what are some common leadership styles? This is one of the images that will come up. And after doing some researching and reading some interesting articles, I found that a lot of these leadership styles, as I was reading about them, I found that I know some people that fit each one of these leadership styles. So this is your next challenge. I challenge you to go do some research on your own and kind of see like what are these little leadership styles. But let me kind of walk through some of them with you. So on the wheel, you might see the laissez-faire leadership style, right? This is kind of the leadership style with the least amount of oversight and that leader who's not going to micromanage. They're more hands-off, okay? This type of leader works best when they're leading a highly skilled and experienced team or group of people who are more self-starters or motivated, right? So an example of this type of leadership might be a CEO of a startup company, right? Because there's no major office policies, there's no office hours. The CEO is going to put full trust into their employees, and they're going to focus on the overall workings of running the company, right? So that's one example. Another example might be a servant leader. A servant leader are those leaders who have people first mindset, and they help teams focus on playing to their own strengths. So I know what my strengths are, I know what my coworkers' strengths are, and I would help them lead their strengths best. Okay, so then we have, let's talk about the democratic leadership. Okay, the democratic leadership style is the leader who makes the decisions based on the input of each team member. This style of leader is going to be the one who makes the final call, and each team member has an equal say on the direction. So a democratic leader might say, for example, what do you think? Or what are your ideas? Or tell me more. Right? And then another one might be, let's say, the bureaucratic leader. Okay, the bureaucratic leader. This leader adheres strictly to company policies and traditions, and they set clearly defined expectations. A leader in this leadership style might be someone in the healthcare industry, because we have certain healthcare standards we have to go by, or maybe in like a construction field, right? Or maybe in the military, because there are certain protocols that we have to strictly adhere by, or people's health and safety are going to be in that would be a problem, right? So these are just certain leadership styles. I want you to take a minute. What style do you tend to use, and why does that tend to be your go-to style? So this is a moment I want you to use the chat. I'm going to ask Elise to help me put some stuff in the chat and read some. What leadership style do you tend to use, and why is that your go-to? Okay, friends, I know you're still with me. I see the nods. What's your leadership style? Jason, I knew I could get Jason to participate. You always do. It varies based on the situation. Different people need to lead in different ways. You're exactly right. I love that. What else do we have, Elise?
We have democratic. We have a mix of democratic and autocratic. Not everything can always be a group decision. Democratic blended with transformational.
Absolutely.
Transformational or servant.
That is very you, Sarah Zuleta. I love that. So as you can see, all different types of leadership is important, and all different types of leaderships are needed. And I would be really surprised if you at some point in your leadership style, if it didn't fluctuate at certain times. So maybe in one setting, you might lean more towards that servant leadership, but at other times you might lean more towards that coaching, for example. It's probably going to fluctuate a little bit. Okay, so now let's see what Beckett is going to tell us next. We're going to talk about what should a leader know.
Is one thing that a leader should know?
Stay in the right place.
Stay in the right place.
Actually, stay straight. Go walk straight.
So we have stay in the right place and stay straight. Again, I just love his context of like being a line leader. That's why he's going to the stay straight. One of his answers earlier, I should have used a blooper reel, was a good leader carries a stick. And I'm like, why are you carrying a stick? And it's because the line leader has a stick. So anyways, whenever he said that one thing a leader should know is to stay straight, right? Like to stay in the right place. It got me thinking, friends. It got me thinking about how that is so applicable to what we are doing as Kiwanians. I know that we can all think about those leaders who have gotten into other areas that they do not need to go to, right? Think about it. Do we know those people who've kind of, gone into those areas that we don't need to? I see you shaking your head. And if you're not, then you're lying, because we know that those people are around, right? Like we've seen them. We probably work with some of them. So when he was saying stay straight, it just got me thinking, the straight and narrow road, right? So I kind of Googled that phrase of like, what does it mean to walk the straight and narrow, right? And really it goes to say in the several definitions, say to maintain a morally upright way of life, to only make choices that are considered morally and legally correct, right? And I think that there's that thing that we need to think about. What does that mean? Like what decisions are leaders making that are morally right? And what are those things that we need to think about if we're being one-minded, right? Like if this is the path that we're going, how do we as leaders get there? Just something for you to think about. Okay. So next, we're going to think outside the box, because not only do leaders tend to stay straight, but they also have some other common factors that I want to look at together with you. I have a couple of those
Is one thing that
up on this screen, and I kind of want to walk through them. So a couple common factors that I think leaders tend to have in common is that they have a passion for the organization's mission. What is the mission of Kiwanis International? We all know it. We've probably all written it. We probably all say it. And it's super simple, right? It's to serve the children of the world, one child and one community at a time, right? Like let's think about that for a second. If we as leaders are truly focusing on the mission of Kiwanis International, it should be really hard for us to focus on anything else, right? All of those arguments that we get into, all of those conflicting personalities that we tend to see, if we're truly focusing on the mission, then why are we letting anything else get in our way? I think that that's something we could tend to lean on, and something that we could really put more effort and energy into. Next on the screen, you'll see the ability to adapt and motivate others. Adapting to situations and motivating others, y'all, is where it's at. Leaders are often focused on the leave behind versus the takeaway. You know what I mean? Like I say often, here's some things I hope you take away from this, right? But as a leader, what if I said, here are some things I want to leave behind? How would that change the perspective? And how would that change the concept, right? It's a little subtle change, but it really impacts the statement, right? So rather than takeaways, let's do some leave behinds. That's your third challenge, if you're keeping up with all the challenges I'm giving you so far. Next on the screen, we have, they're constantly focusing on improving their own skill sets. Y'all, I have already admitted to you, and I'm not ashamed, that I am a learner. I am someone who I thrive on personality assessments. I'm a woo on the Strengths Finders. I am a blue in the True Colors. I love to learn more about myself and learn about other people, because that is how people, that's what makes people tick, and that's how people interact, and I love learning about that. I'm a lifelong learner. I also love to read books, and I have a whole list of books of stuff that you could do about leadership, and I'm sure I've shared those with you before. But I think that there are so many opportunities that we as learners can take and simply use to improve our own learning, because the world is changing all the time, right? Like things aren't just staying the same, they're always changing. So here's my not shameless at all plug for Kiwanis Amplify. Has anyone taken Kiwanis Amplify? if you haven't, it's a program that you should really look into. Our past international president, Art Riley, was really passionate about leadership. So there was this whole committee and now this whole program that was formed to help us do just that, better our leaders. And there's a whole section just on leadership. So if it's not something you should look into, do yourself a favor, take a note right now, or at least can send it out in the chat. What are some things that you can do? One of them, super easy, Kiwanis Amplify. If you just Google it, it will come up. It's a really good program. But again, and I think she just put it in the chat, so you are awesome. Thanks, Elise. So again, read books, listen to podcasts, talk to each other. Look at LinkedIn. LinkedIn offers some really great leadership things. So those are things we can look at too. Next on the screen is leaders have a clear focus on their goals. They have a passion and a drive. What do I mean by that? They know what their goals are and they know how to achieve them. And also they're going to focus on them each and every single day. We tend to put the most focus on what matters most to us and what matters most to us at the moment. Elise and I were talking earlier and about or just in general about New Year's goals, right? Like people tend to work out more in the beginning of the year because they're like, I'm going to work out every day, right? And so if that's a focus for you, great. You're going to put your time and energy into that. What if our focus were our members? What if our focus was learning more individually? What if our focus was doing something that's going to make a difference, right? Like what would that look like? And what would happen if we put that at the forefront of our mind? So last on the screen is leaders understand their why. This is a really super simple concept that you can understand. It's by Simon Sinek, right? It's a great YouTube video, short and sweet. There's a book, Start With Why. So many great things. I could spend hours talking about just this, but I'll do you a favor. I won't this time. However, the whole concept that you need to know about starting your why. 90% of organizations understand what they do. Most organizations even understand how they do it. They understand what they do. They understand how they do it. But most organizations struggle to understand and to clearly communicate why they do it. Let me say that again. Organizations know what they do, they know how they do it, but they can't explain why. So let's use Kiwanis as an example. Kiwanis International, we are an organization that serves children. That's our what. Our how is that we do it organically through whatever works best in our communities, whether that's service projects, fundraisers, volunteering, whatever, right? That's our how we do that. But what's our why? The why is so special because it varies for each and every single one of us. What my why is different than what Gail's why is. It's different than Ed's, and that's different than Betty Parker. So it's all just different, and our why matters. So do you clearly know how to communicate your why you're a part of this awesome organization? If you don't, that's okay. No worries. Spend a couple of minutes and think about that. Hop on the phone with someone who can talk to you about that. Spend some time journaling about what that might look like, or just think about it, right? That's all I'm asking you to do. Think about what your why is. So now I want to talk a little bit about a story. Okay, I am going to share a story with you about a coworker who is going to go about her morning routine at work. Okay, so let me introduce you to Susie. This is Susie up on the screen. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because this could be a typical morning in the life of one of your employees, if you're an employer, or as a leader, one of the people that you are leading. So let's say you're a Kiwanis Club president. This could be one of the people in your Kiwanis Club. So let's just keep that in mind as I go through this story time. So this is Susie up on the screen. She walks into the office at 8:00 a.m. The receptionist greets her with a smile, calls her by the name she prefers, Susie, not Susan, and strikes up some small talk. So Susie's positive to negative ratio is already +1, -0. As Susie rounds the corner, she notices that the elevator door is beginning to close. So she speeds up, knowing there's usually a wait for the elevator first thing in the morning. It looks like she's going to miss the elevator, but at the last moment, an arm shoots through the door, stopping it from closing. As the door opens, Susie thanks the unknown woman who held the elevator door for her. Susie's ratio for positivity, 2, negative 0. A few minutes later, Susie settles into her desk and starts to read her email. One of the first messages is from her least favorite coworker, Greg. Darn that Greg. Even before opening the message, she knows what to expect, relentless complaining. As if on cue, Greg's note starts with a one-liner about how bad traffic was coming into work that morning. Then he breaks into a tirade about having to pick up the slack for the rest of the team. Yeah, right, Susie says. She knows that Greg's constant negativity is the real drag on her work productivity, and reading his note is a lousy way to start her day. Susie's positivity ratio, 2, negative 1. Instead of venting her frustration to others, Susie decides to grab a cup of coffee and settle down. In the break room, she sees Amy, one of her closest work friends. Amy smiles and immediately tells Susie that she loves the new shoes she's wearing. They end up chatting for about 10 minutes, and Susie feels much better. So her positive ratio, 3, negative ratio, 1. Susie loses track of time while she happily chats with Amy, but then she discovers she's running late for her 8:30 meeting. As Susie rushes down the hall to the conference room, she feels guilty. She is rarely, if ever, late to meetings. Susie finally makes it to the conference room, about 7 minutes behind schedule, according to her watch. Meanwhile, you, Susie's boss, are sitting in the conference room along with 5 other people who report to you. Everyone else has arrived on time and was ready to go by 8:30 on the dot. By the time Susie walks in, your patience is running thin. The first thing Susie does before even taking her seat is apologize to the group for wasting their time. Then you decide to kick off the meeting by saying, well, now we can get started 10 minutes late, behind schedule. This jab really hit Susie like a brick. She already felt guilty and had to apologize to everyone. Your comment only made her feel worse. Susie's positive ratio, 3, negative ratio, 2. So in the span of just 30 minutes, Susie, your best employer, had 3 interactions that were positive and 2 that were negative. So put it another way, 3-2. That probably doesn't sound like too bad of a ratio, right? But y'all, here's what I'm here to tell you. That's not good. 3 is great, but that 2 really brought her down, right? And that she, as your best employer, as your best employee, right, you are threatening to lose her. You could lose one of your best people. And so many times I find that we're focusing on that too. As leaders or even as humans, we tend not to think about what someone's going through before we interact with them. I immediately said, hey, Elise, how's it going? But maybe I didn't ask her how her day was going. And maybe she's had the worst day ever, and now she has to come to this and figure out how to record it, right? Which she's doing a great job, by the way, because she's always great at things like that. But if you don't ask, you don't know. So I think oftentimes we as leaders assume this is the place that people are at. So what could we do differently to really realize this is where people are at? Because everyone's having interactions around us, and those interactions were really important and really substantial to her. So a couple of questions that I think you can ask yourself is, do I focus on the positive or negative characteristics of others? What does that look like? Am I generally giving people the benefit of the doubt? Am I in right now? And how is that mood affecting me? Am I starving right now? And so I am not doing the best that I can? Something to think about. Being hangry is real, folks. We all know that. Other questions you might consider: am I putting my personal feelings aside when I can learn from alternate perspectives? How might the background of this person affect their feelings, right? So these are just a couple of questions I would encourage you to think about, especially when you are leading a group of people or when you're interacting with humans in general. And then a couple of things, what if? What if we had more organizations who are networking versus that top-down pyramid? That top-down pyramid that I'm talking about is it goes from here down, right? What if we had more of an organization network conversation style? What would that look like? What if we as leaders focus more on collaboration versus control? What if we as leaders and we in Kiwanis focus more on meanings and we're purpose driven versus profit or take driven? What if we focus more on loving versus winning? What if we focus more on diversity and inclusion versus exclusion and privilege? What would that look like? What about the concept of service versus self-interest, right? Like what would that look like? So a couple of the next steps that I want you to talk about, feel free to share in the chat. Elise, this might be a good time for people to unmute themselves. I want to know, and there are a couple of questions on the screen. What practical next steps can you take to be a better leader in your club? And what would you like your fellow club members to know? What would you like them to learn? What are some thoughts? Elise, I'll ask you to help me monitor the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself as Elise allows you to. I know she has to click a special button. What are your thoughts? Oh, Brad Boyce says, our ROI, ripples of impact. So true. Ed Gleaner, focus on my own mood before leading a meeting. Don't transfer frustration or negativity. Absolutely, friend. 100% true. What else? With the new year, I'm trying to say yes more before being Mr. Pragmatic. I love that. That is so true. Good to see you, Rich. We're at this session again. I changed it up a little bit. Hi, Kristen. Listen to the concerns and thoughts of other members. Absolutely. So true. Gayla saying, see the light in others. Yeah. And it's hard to see when that light seems dim, but it's there, friends. Everyone has a light. Anything else? Cynthia, mentor more members. Absolutely, friend. So glad you're here. What else? Oh, Robert says, I like to better orient our members to Kiwanis and engage with new members sooner. Yeah, that makes a huge impact. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. Ooh, Brad mentioned the concept of yes, not yes, but. Yeah, let me share this with you, friends, because this is something I'm super passionate about. I've encouraged my coworkers and actually anyone I come in contact with. Oftentimes we as humans are naturally inclined to think negatively, right? That's just our human nature at times. However, I'm going to encourage you to simply change that by using one word difference. So instead of saying, yes, I want to eat pizza, but I have to work out first, maybe the concept would be, yes, I want to eat pizza and I'm going to work out first, right? Or yes, she is great, but she always shows up late. Yes, she's great and she could do better about her time management skills, right? Like it's that concept of yes and or no and instead of using but. It's a really great concept, something you could practice every day. A couple more people have said, try to get more members involved so they feel part of the group. Absolutely. Be more welcoming. Yeah, absolutely. Listen to innovative ideas for improvement. It's not about if it's broken, don't fix it. Yeah, I love it. These are great, friends. Well, the one thing that I will leave you with are just a few words of advice from my dear friend Beckett. So let me see if I'll pull this up on the screen. Let's see.
Work makes the dream work.
Teamwork makes the dream work. And finally,
People work together, good things happen.
When people work together, good things happen. So, I think one of the things that not only can we take from Beck how cute he is, but we as leaders, maybe we should tend to think about what leadership looks like on the playground. If you want to see what leadership looks like, think about that playground situation, right? Like what does that look like? A real leader isn't the one dividing friends into teams or even giving out orders to his friends or his or her friends. Instead, it's the kid who makes sure no one is left out. It's the kid who runs out to when someone sprains an ankle or gets hurt and asks if they're okay. They offer maybe to have some of their sandwich when they are in the lunchroom. The leader gives an umbrella to a friend or jumps in the puddles with them. But ultimately, it's those kids who express kindness, mercy, and courage, even when it's unpopular. So we as adults can learn a lot about leadership from kids. And I think that as an organization that focuses on kids, we can and should do more of that every day. So that's all I have. I, again, appreciate you for hanging out with me tonight. I'll turn it back over to Lise. I don't know if there's any questions or any thoughts, but thanks again, everyone. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Emily. Brad just had a really sweet comment in the chat, and he said, "Nice presentation. Hope you will share your PowerPoint deck with Becca and his mom for his scrapbook."
Oh, for sure. Yes, I'm going to watch this on Facebook.
Nice. And you know, he will be on YouTube as well. His little likeness will be on YouTube on our New England and Bermuda YouTube channel. So I will send the link for that. And you can send that to Beckett's mom as well.
Let's make it go viral.
There you
Yeah,
go.
he'll eat that up.
So Emily, only one question for you, which I think is probably a question that you would have lots of answers for, could think of in a lot of different ways. But if for example, if this individual feels like their club leadership needs some positive infusion or some positive changes, what would your recommendation be for some first steps to create a more positive culture or positive culture of leadership in a club?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And I have so many thoughts, and I will be curious to know if anyone else has thoughts too. My first thought is, if you see that there needs to be some positivity there, then you need to be that positive person, and you need to step up to be a volunteer leader, whether that is step up to be that leader that needs to go away, or whether that's volunteer to step up in a way that can work with that person and be that light that we've been talking about. I think that's something important. I also think you can have that conversation rather than a conversation, or what if you had a carefrontation? You know, that caring conversation that says like, hey, do you know how you're coming across? Like, maybe you're being a little bit of a bummer. Maybe we should liven things up a little bit, right? And bring that positivity, because if we focus on the negative, we're not going to get anywhere, right? So those would be my first two steps. But number one, you can't complain unless you're willing to help and be part of the solution. So that would be my first thing. People tend to always come to people with problems rather than solutions. So I would make sure that you're going to that person saying, here's what I'm noticing from an objective perception, and see what you can change. Because you can, it just takes time. That's also the thing that leaders need to know. Change takes time, and it can't happen overnight. I'm the first to admit that. Like, I wish it happened overnight and I could snap my fingers, but it does take a little time sometimes. Does anyone else have thoughts on that? What you would do in that situation? It's a good question. Great. No one would do anything. All right. We're doing good, folks.
Emily, can I speak instead of type?
Please. I would love that. Hi, friend.
I think, this is Rich. I think this is what's holding maybe some folks back is typing in the dark like me. I proudly wear, I joke when I say proudly wear, I say that I'm the wet blanket. I am the pragmatic guy who looks at things and understands where we really are and what we have to do, and trying to get others to see that as pragmatism as opposed to negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance, the nuts and bolts of this is where we are, this is what we're dealing with, and still inject the positivity? Because some folks only respond to woohoo. I always tell Gayla, I do not sparkle, but I think I have other amazing
Or
qualities.
to make the dream
Oh,
boy.
sorry.
So how
Yeah.
do you balance, the keeping it real with being positive?
Gosh, that is really hard. And I will say that I am someone that I am that sparkle and I am that cheerleader and more woohoo. So I think that you have to go into that conversation and into that whole concept of knowing that not everyone reacts to that. Like you just mentioned, that's not your style. So I, as a leader, would go to you saying in a way that you're going to hear me, right? Because not everyone responds to the way that I would handle something. So I'm going to go in a way that you would. That would be my first tactic. And I think also you have to know that you have to be realistic, right? Like it's not all rainbows and butterflies and sunshine at times. And you have to be okay with that, which is one of those concepts that's easier said than done. But also I think that you as a leader don't have to have all the answers. And as a leader, one of the best traits that you can have is to tag team with other people who can help you reiterate your message that you want to get across. So if I was trying to get something across, I would absolutely grab someone to help me reiterate my message. And because sometimes people, they may not listen to me, but they may listen to Elise, for example. And we could say the exact same thing, but it would come across differently because we are two separate humans who have two separate contexts and backgrounds and the way that we deliver things. So that's how I would approach that situation, is by being realistic about the situation, communicating to the people and or persons in a way that they communicate with, and then also have someone tag team with it because they're more likely to listen to two people than just one.
Well, or not, maybe not just two people, but if somebody responds to the woohoo and the sparkle, find somebody who speaks woohoo and sparkle
Yep.
to help deliver the message. And that also gives an opportunity, I think, to do something that I learned from a horrible boss in the 90s. But she used to always say, you know what you're really good at? Could you help me blank? And so already you feel built up. And then you're like, well, of course I'll help you, and so I try to interject that whenever I'm asking sometimes if I don't even really need the help, but I know that it's going to get somebody else involved and participating.
You're exactly right. And people are less likely to turn you down when you ask them like in person or face to face, like, I need your help. Can you help me? They're less likely to turn you down that way. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, ideas?
I found that out personally as well. As a younger member of a group of older, mostly men, we had a few in the group who, like, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way it should be done, and trying to get some new ideas in. And one of the members kind of had backed out for a while because things hadn't gone the way he wanted. And so when I went in as president, I personally called him and said, you've got a lot of experience in the club, and I really would appreciate it if you would come back. I need your help. And he did, and he has, and he's been very supportive. So one-on-one is very important. And I've done that with a few people.
That is so good. I'm glad you shared that. I don't want to say that there was an ego involved in that situation because I don't know it, but y'all, as humans, we naturally need to hear what we're doing well or what's good, because we tend to not be able to communicate that as clearly as other people can. So for you to personally ask that person, hey, can you help me? You have done great and I need this. That is definitely something that sparks an interest to us of like, oh yeah, that's something I'm good at. Let me go help with that. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I just want everybody to give a huge round of applause for Emily, our fantastic presenter.
Thank you.
According to our fabulous interclub liaison, David Griffin, we had a record-breaking night because of the Emily Saalfrank fan club. We had 47 participants representing 35 clubs. So that is very exciting for us. Thank you all for joining us this evening. As I mentioned earlier, this is the 5th of our monthly virtual workshops for the 2021-2022 Kiwanis year. They are typically the first Wednesday of each month at 7 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock Atlantic time. And we do have lots of different types of workshops, lots of different presentations. The exception is next month. The month of March is actually going to be on a different date. It'll be on March 9th, which is the second Wednesday of the month. So let me tell you about some upcoming workshop and training opportunities. Some of these are just New England and Bermuda specific, and some of them are open to everyone. So a little something for everybody. The next 2 weeks for members of the New England and Bermuda district, we are offering a 2-part series that is for club coaching certification. So if you are interested, if you're a member of the New England and Bermuda district, and you're interested in becoming a club coach because you want to help build new clubs or help existing clubs grow and strengthen, this is a training opportunity for you. So that will be on February 9th and February 16th at 7 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock Atlantic time. And that will be a 1-hour training both weeks. And that will be presented by Emily again, and Regina Woods-Mitchell, who is the Kiwanis International Club opening specialist. Again, that is only for New England and Bermuda members. On March 9th at 7 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock Atlantic time, our virtual workshop will be an exciting interview between New England and Bermuda District Governor Gayla Bartlett and past international Kiwanis presidents Sue Peterson and Jane Erickson. So as you may know, March is Women's History Month. So Governor Gayla wanted to interview the 2 past Kiwanis International presidents who have been women. So that's Sue Peterson and Jane Erickson. So they will be joining us on March 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 8 o'clock Atlantic time. So save the date for that. For members of the New England and Bermuda district, we also have our midwinter conference coming up in Mansfield, Massachusetts. That is March 11th through 13th. So we have some exciting education opportunities for you in person there. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there's probably something like 20 workshops that weekend, service projects, a lot of hands-on fun activities. So make sure to come if you're available. Mansfield is, pretty commutable for most of the New England district. Unfortunately, Bermuda is a little bit farther, and with COVID, we will miss you guys. But we will have some really great education opportunities there. And then continuing on the first Wednesday of April, and then every subsequent Wednesday after that for the rest of the Kiwanis year, we will continue to have virtual workshops. So you can find some helpful links. I just sent them in the chat in our link tree. In that link tree, you have our New England District website, our Facebook page, our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, and our virtual workshop resources, which has copies of PowerPoints. It has the attendance logs for interclub purposes, lots of exciting content all in one little link there for you guys. So remember to encourage fellow members to join us for education opportunities. You can find all the recordings of the ones that are not super interactive on our YouTube page. They're also saved on our Facebook page and in our Facebook group. So lots of exciting content there on that link tree, so save that. I would like to thank our district education committee members, Brian Cofrancesco, who is assistant to the leadership development coordinator, and David Griffin, who is our interclub liaison, because they help tirelessly behind the scenes to make these monthly workshops a success. David was doing a great job keeping track of all of our members from all over the place tonight. So thank you guys so much. I want to make sure that everybody stays safe. I hope that you're all well. And we will see you back here on Zoom on March 9th, 2022. Have a great night, everyone.
Stay safe.
Good night.